Hello everybody, Corinne Smith here, former librarian, avid reader, and someone who has a 45-minute commute to work. And 36 of those 38 miles are along a 4-lane highway that can become pretty routine when you travel it long enough. So, in recent years, I've abandoned listening to the classic rock station from the big city down the road and have instead turned to audiobooks, specifically CD sets offered by our local library system. This is what I'm going to be talking about today. I am going to share with you 10 terrific memoirs that I have listened to over the past 2 or 3 years. You, of course, may not want the CD format. You can listen to them in another electronic format if you can find it, or you can read these books in print somehow. It's up to you. Suit yourself. Now, when it comes to my commuter listening, I have some personal rules that I follow. I prefer memoirs and autobiographies, and I prefer that they have been written and are read by that person themselves. I want to hear their stories from themselves. I want them to be in my car with me, and I can just drive and they can tell me what was going on. These folks are all good writers. Some of them may have had some coaching in organizing the material. They're all very good readers. You can hear the emotions in their voices, both in good times and in challenging ones. The only downside to listening to these books is that you don't get to see the sections of photos that are usually tucked inside. So if you want to do that, I recommend, sneaking down to the library and picking the real book off the shelf and looking at them that way. I have done that myself. Why do we like to read biographies anyway? Do you know? We could discuss this topic for a long time. I think the basic answer is to find the connections. I believe that our highest purpose in life is to discover our connections. Our connections with the planet, with other people, with ourselves, our own feelings and emotions and ideas, all of it. And we want to hear good, compelling stories from people. We also want to know what challenges they overcame to become successful. We also want to learn what we have in common with them and what we don't have in common with them. We want to find where our lives intersect, because somehow they probably already do. Anyway, I've got 10 people and books to share with you today. With this show and tell session, I have some of the books in CD format and some in hardcover, depending on what I could quickly grab from the Levi Haywood Memorial Library. Thank you very much, library and librarians. Some of these titles are books that I deliberately sought out. Some of them I just saw on the shelf and decided to give them a try. These are the 10 best, again, memoirs that I've listened to in the last 2 or 3 years. I'm listing them in alphabetical order by author's surname, okay? In almost every instance, as per my rules, were written and are read by that person themselves. So, first up is Lessons from Lucy, The Simple Joys of an Old Happy Dog by longtime journalist and humorist Dave Barry. Came out in 2019. If you've read Dave's work, and he has lots of books out, you know how funny he can be at pointing out all the nutty and ridiculous parts of life, daily life. Well, here he considers typical situations in the way that he sees his dog Lucy approach them, especially with regards to growing older. And the book is organized by actual lessons to be learned. Now, I don't often give myself permission to dive into animal-related books because I'm a very sensitive person and I don't think I'll be able to handle what happens at the end. Here I figured Dave would be funny and gentle anyway if that happened to be the case, especially since the theme is growing older. I was right. This is fine. This is fine. You'll love this book if you're a pet owner, and if you're not, that's okay. You'll like it anyway. I think you'll enjoy it, and you will learn about Dave and his family too, and not only Lucy the dog. Lessons from Lucy by Dave Barry. Next up is Wishful Drinking by Carrie Fisher. And here I'm actually going to cheat and combine her three memoirs: Wishful Drinking, which came out in 2009, Shockaholic, which came out in 2011, and The Princess Diarist from 2016. With these three books, Carrie reveals details about her unusual childhood and her unusual adulthood, because being the daughter of Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher surely could not result in having an ordinary life. Carrie is especially honest about her failings and about how she suffered from depression and decided to get shock treatments to help cope with that. Of course, she's honest about what it feels like to be forever known about as Princess Leia, and to be forever portrayed in Western culture as wearing a metal bikini and being chained as a slave to Jabba the Hutt. Now, there's some overlap in her stories between the books. If you want her full story, then read or listen to all three. She's quite an animated reader, and there are parts in these books where you're just going to laugh along with her as she laughs out loud too. Of course, if you're a true Star Wars fan, then you'll especially appreciate The Princess Diarist, because she provides inside scoops about what was happening behind the scenes and away from the cameras during the filming of the first film. These books make for fascinating and fun commuter listening. But of course, Carrie's is obviously an incredibly sad story. She passed away right after The Princess Diarist came out in 2016. So, laugh along with Carrie while you can. Enjoy her stories with her. And you have to be sad when the last disc is done. Keeping with the theme of three books, I'm going to turn to Michael J. Fox, who has also given us three memoirs. Lucky Man from 2002, Always Looking Up: The Adventures of an Incurable Optimist from 2009, and No Time Like the Future, An Optimist Considers Mortality from 2020. Again, as with Carrie's books, there's going to be overlap in the stories between the books, and you can probably anticipate what you're going to hear about Michael's beginnings as a child in Western Canada, becoming an actor. Then it's on soon to Back to the Future trilogy, the TV series Family Ties, and of course you'll witness his honesty about being diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and about all the challenges that he and his family have faced as a result of it. And the major fact that he formed the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's research in order to find causes and cures. His is an amazing story. It's great to hear him tell it himself. And if you think you only want to read one of these, then I would probably recommend just Lucky Man, the first one. If you want to know the real work of his foundation, then that comes in all three. So, great story, an amazing life. Thank you very much, Michael, for sharing it with us. Now, back in 2006, when everybody was agog over Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Eat, Pray, Love, I resisted the trend because at my core, I'm a nonconformist and I don't jump on every bandwagon that comes along. This one turned out to be an incredibly successful bestseller, and I never picked up a copy. And then, again, with my audiobook fascination, I found it on a library shelf one day, and I thought, wonder what everybody was talking about back then. Or maybe I should listen to it and give it a try. Well, may I just say, this is now my favorite memoir to listen to. So much so that the first time I listened to it, when it was done, I put the first disc right back into the player and listened to the whole book again a second time. And when that was over, I went on eBay and bought my own set so that I could listen to this memoir anytime I'm between other books in the car. That's how much I like this. This is Elizabeth Gilbert's year-long journey of incredible self-discovery as she dives into the cultures and people of three countries for three specific good reasons: Italy, India, and Indonesia. And here she tells the story herself. Not only that, but she also masterfully mimics all of the voices and accents of the people she meets along the way. So, in essence, she's acting out all the parts herself. There are some other books, especially history books, where they'll have different people narrating different characters' parts. Not the case here. Elizabeth does them all very well. She knows what they talked like. She heard them, you know. So it's terrific. If you get nothing else out of this program today, let me direct you to listen to Eat, Pray, Love, even if you read the book long ago when it first came out. Again, I'm approaching this whole genre here in alphabetical order by author's name, but if I had to rank them as favorites, this one would be number one for me, without a doubt. So thank you, Elizabeth Gilbert. I recently found The Boys, a memoir of Hollywood and family, at one of our local libraries. Came out in 2021, written and read by Ron Howard and Clint Howard. And I thought, I know these guys. I wouldn't mind hanging out with them. It's great. The introduction is written and read by Bryce Howard, one of Ron's daughters. And of course, you can anticipate again what you're going to hear here. The two brothers read their own portions of the book. And of course, with Ron, we start with Andy Griffith Show and move on to American Graffiti and Happy Days. From Clint, we hear about Gentle Ben and Star Trek and lots of places where he's made cameo appearances. And we can trace Ron's journey into directorship as well as Clint's settling into roles as a character actor. It's great to hear their stories from them about shows that we saw and grew up with ourselves. And it's good to understand who these two guys are as individuals themselves and not as fictional characters. Overall, though, this is a story about a tightly knit, loving family made up of two energetic boys and a pair of supportive parents who had been actors themselves. Both Ron and Clint owe their successes to the efforts of their mother Jean and their father Rance. Rance especially figures large here because he coached the boys in many of their roles and continued to be a sounding board for all of their projects as they got older. There's a lot of love here. Again, it's really fun to hang out with Ron and Clint Howard and the boys. Going back to animals, another animal-oriented memoir I'm recommending here is Cy Montgomery's The Soul of an Octopus, a surprising exploration into the wonder of consciousness, which came out in 2015. Cy is an accomplished and award-winning nature writer who has encountered and reported on many different animal species over the years. Here her focus is specifically on octopuses, which is the correct plural form of the animal name. Cy lives in southern New Hampshire, and she makes regular trips to Boston and the New England Aquarium in order to meet octopuses. They've got names like Athena, Octavia, Callie, and Karma. They all have unique behaviors and even unique personalities. We learn a lot about these intriguing creatures, and we learn a lot about Cy because we follow her where she goes, even scuba diving in natural ocean habitats in order to find octopuses in the wild. I would not plunge my arms into an octopus tank. I would not go scuba diving in chilly waters just to meet one face to face. But I'm glad somebody wants to do it. And I'm glad Cy talked about this. Yes, this is an animal story. Yes, it can get emotional. And not only for the listener, but also for the reader, author. Cy puts a lot of her passion and her entire being into telling her story. The Soul of an Octopus by Cy Montgomery. Next up is quite a hefty tome. And I knew that going in, and it's really the set that started me off on this habit of listening to memoirs and autobiographies during my 36-mile highway commute. When I learned that Barack Obama's book, The Promised Land, was coming out in 2020, I knew that I wanted to read it. I knew it would be huge in size and in in making a difference. I knew that it would obviously focus a lot on American government and politics. I also knew that if I read the book in print, I would probably want to skim over some parts that I might have thought were too political for me to understand or care about. And I also thought that that would be a disservice to the author. So I thought, I want to listen to Barack tell me his story. I want to listen to The Promised Land. This is a commitment. 28 CDs in the set. Barack was with me for a whole month in my car. But it was great. It's well worth the time invested. Helps a lot if you have already read, well, helps a little bit, if you have already read Dreams from My Father, one of his previous books where he talks about, his ancestry and exactly where he came from. But you don't have to have read that because he does cover some of that here. So he does cover his early life. He does cover meeting and marrying Michelle and becoming the father of 2 daughters. But the majority of this book is about his first term as American president. Just his first term, mind you. He's working on a second book to talk about the second term and what came afterward. And that one will probably be just as sizable. So that's A Promised Land by Barack Obama. You learn more about him. You also learn about how the American system of government works. And of course, he's a great writer and a great reader. And when Barack was done talking to me, I thought, well, hey, another book that I avoided when it first came out was Michelle Obama's Becoming. Wouldn't it be great to hear her book right after I listened to her husband's? And it was, okay? Becoming came out in 2018. Another bestseller, was up there for a long, long time. Everybody was reading it. I had decided not to. But yeah, this was a great pairing. Of course, from her, we hear about her beginnings in the South Side of Chicago, education at Princeton University, and onward and upward, and about meeting an interesting law intern with a very interesting name. Yes, some of their stories overlap, which is part of the fun of it. You hear the different perspectives from the 2 different people. And so you gain a further appreciation for their individual accomplishments, but also as a couple. And as I record this program, Michelle's new book just came out, The Light We Carry, Overcoming in Uncertain Times. I'm already on the waiting list at the library for the CD copy. Let you know in a future program, probably, how that goes. Next up, well, why not? Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run. Came out in 2016. Oh my goodness. You already know that he's a great writer and a great storyteller. Why not listen to Bruce talk about his whole life? From New Jersey, onward and upward, and through the music industry. And what's so great about these books is that we already have connections to a lot of these people. We've seen their performances, on the screen or in their songs. We know the lyrics to the songs. We know the scripts to the TV shows, So what we get from these people are the rest of the stories, What it took to get those productions out there, what hard work it took to reach those successes. This is what you're in for with Born to Run, and it's a terrific time spent with Bruce. Yes, he made a theatrical show about a lot of this material, but this is much more than a 1 or 2 or 3 hour theatrical show. There's a lot more to understand and enjoy here. Now, here's a special tip from me. Pages 159 to 160 of the print book has a wonderful description where Bruce describes snow. Yes, snow. Didn't know Bruce was a nature writer? Well, he can be. He's a great observer of everything, okay? And he's got this wonderful 1 long paragraph about snow that just blew me away. When I listened to it on CD, I had to to stop the CD and start it over again. So if you have the CD set, it's the 6th CD at the beginning. In the book, it's page 159 to 160. I like this description so much that I have used it as an example in nature writing classes of my own. So thank you, Bruce. Anyway, that's not why you're going to pick this book up to hear about nature. You're going to pick it up for music and traveling around the country and getting into the music industry and all of that good stuff. Born to Run. And again, if I had to rank these books, this would be right behind Eat, Pray, Love. Right behind. Okay. Now, for our last book, I'm breaking my rules. I'm allowed to do that because they're my rules. This final book is not written or read by the people it's about because they're long gone. Okay. It is, however, read by the author, and it is The Wright Brothers by David McCullough. Came out in 2015. Wow. Another book that I didn't read at the time when it came out. But what a story. And to hear David tell it himself is a real treat, especially since we just lost him recently. Of course, the debate continues on whether the Wright brothers were really the very first guys to build and fly in a vehicle that took off in the air. Nevertheless, theirs is an amazing story. These two brothers had a singular goal in mind, and it's like seemingly every day they are doing something that will advance them toward that goal. And you hear about everything that these guys were concerned with when perfected and created, and on and on and on. And after a while, you think to yourself, geez, what did I do today? Here the Wright brothers are building machines that are going to fly off the ground. I better get cracking, you know. It's great inspiration, I can tell you that. Oh, man, it's just wonderful to hear their story, and it's quite impressive. David McCullough and the Wright brothers. By the way, additionally, read any David McCullough book, especially where he is reciting it and narrating it, and that would be great. Anyway, so those are my top 10 people for memoirs to listen to while commuting. Now, has everything I've listened to been a success? No. I have had at least 3 failures that I can remember. One set, I didn't make it through the first CD before I realized I didn't care about this person. I didn't want to hear their story. Boom. Another one I did listen to all the way through because I thought this person was an important figure that I should know about. By the time I got to the end, I was glad I heard it, but I came to the conclusion that I thought the person was an unlikable individual. And a third one was about someone who's already passed, and so it was a different author, and it wasn't read by the person, it wasn't read by the author, it was read by an actor who overacted. And even though I hated his narration, I made it through the whole book because I wanted to know about this person. I will not be listening to anything that actor narrates again. But that's only 3 fails out of many. I haven't kept track of how many I've listened to. And so my point is that there are wonderful tales out there to listen to as you make your commute. I highly recommend these guys, and I highly recommend that you check out what your own library system has to offer. Libraries are still getting books in CD form, okay? They know people like me are out there and will listen to them as we work or commute or whatever. So, there you go. Good reading ahead for you. What memoirs are you listening to? I'd love to hear your comments below. As usual, you want to keep up with what we're doing here, subscribe or ring the bell or like. Would love to hear, again, what you are listening to during your commute. In the meantime, I'm Corinne Smith. Thanks again for listening. I will see you next time.